Welcome to Wonders and Miracles podcast, where we celebrate miraculous moments in everyday lives. I'm Liza Lawrence. I'm glad to have you join me as we celebrate wonders and miracles together. I'm here today with Jennifer from Idaho, and she's going to share the miracles that she has seen with adoption processes. And she's adopted 4 children, and I'm so excited to hear the details of this. I know one of her sons very well. His name's Connor, and he's a good friend of my daughter, Annie. They actually went to the homecoming dance together a couple years ago. So that's some of our fun connections. But Jennifer, thanks for being on the show, and tell us the miracles that you've seen in your life.
Well, thanks, Liza, for having me. As I've thought about adoption, November is National Adoption Awareness Month. And so what a great opportunity to share the miracles that our family has witnessed in adoption. As Liza said, we have 4 children. Our oldest is 21. Connor is turning 18 in January. He's a senior and graduates this year. Logan is 16 and is a sophomore. And Natalie is 15 and is in 8th grade. So that's our family. The oldest 2 came through private agencies, and then my younger 2 came through the state as foster care children. So I'm just going to share a little bit about each of those experiences. And so my husband and I met while going to college, and then we moved down to Cache Valley for him to continue his schooling. You know, you never think about having difficulty in starting your family. You just think it's going to happen and have dreams of how many children you want and think life's going to be bliss. After we'd been married about a year, we decided to start trying for children, and things weren't happening. And so we went and saw some specialists, and after several tests and that, it was a little disheartening that we had 0% chance of ever having children of our own. And I remember being really distraught about that. It's kind of heartbreaking when you envision things one way and things don't work out that way. And one of our specialists said, you know, some couples come with stars in their eyes and think that, you know, I'm going to be able to solve all their problems. And sometimes it's not meant to pan out that way. And, you know, and there are other avenues out there to pursue. And just the more I began thinking about that, it was never really important for my husband and I to have someone that looked like us. We just felt like we wanted children in our home, regardless of how they came. And so being doers, that was enough to get us started down the road of adoption. And so we started filling out our paperwork while we lived in Cache Valley, and while my husband was going to school, he was finishing up. We got to the end of finishing our paperwork just about the time that he was finishing schooling, and we were looking for jobs. This is where I feel like the first miracle of the whole process happened. Is usually you're just accepted in the state where you complete your adoption and where you're living. We were kind of in limbo, knowing for sure where we were going to end up. And so we hurried to finish up our paperwork because we had earnest money on a townhouse in Cache Valley. He had applied for several jobs. So Cache Valley's pretty big, and he had lots of choices of schools he had interviewed for. And we just felt for sure that he would get a job in Cache Valley. After all, that's where we were planning on staying. But there were different plans for us. He ended up getting a job in Idaho. And so we ended up moving. To me, that's the first miracle, because all of our children came through Idaho, all within a 30-mile radius of where we ended up moving to. And had we stayed in Utah, I believe the children that were meant to come us would have been more difficult to get them. And so that to me is just the first miracle, is just moving and being in a place where we were ready to have the children that were meant to come to us. Our adoption worker was very kind and transferred our file to Idaho Falls, and we ended up just meeting with a worker. There are lots of different things when you do adoption through our private agency. How much you paid for adoption was based on how much your income was. Well, wow. My husband was a school teacher at the time. He still is. He's in administration now. But just starting out, and school teachers didn't make a ton of money. So adoptions for us were very minimal. We only had to pay $4,000 for our older 2 children. So anyway, that in and of itself is a miracle, because we just don't have that source of income to pay some of these exorbitant amounts that other couples have. So he came and looked at our house. We just bought a house, and you want your worker to love everything about your house. Our house was brand new. We had bought it in a newer subdivision where kind of newer, younger families all lived. And we loved our house. The master suite was upstairs, but the problem with it was 2 bedrooms were clear on the basement level. So there was a whole floor in between us. And our adoption worker didn't like that. And being new to the process, you just get really nervous. You want everyone to like everything about you in the process. You feel like you're interviewing for the job of your lifetime. You picture the job you really want, and this is a dream you've dreamed about more than just a dream job. It's what you've dreamed about your whole life of becoming. And so you want birth parents to like you, you want your adoption worker to like you want everyone to like you. And so when he came and said he really didn't like the layout of our house, we were a little disheartened. That's kind of a big problem to overcome. But we soon convinced him that that wouldn't be a problem with technology and baby monitors and things like that. And we were approved. Also, going back to the adoption process, you fill out a whole bunch of paperwork. You have to claim what you make in this, and I'm talking about the private agency we went through. It may be a little different with other agencies, but we had to fill out, how much money we made. We had to fill out all about us. Like, I think there was a 50 questionnaire, or maybe it was 100, of how your parenting style and how you would parent. And of course, being new parent, never having a child, you think you have all the answers and nothing's ever going to go wrong. But
yeah, I always say you do your best parenting before you have children.
that is so true. You see people in the store, you have a solution for them, but yeah, things totally change when you become a parent yourself. So we answered that questionnaire. That's a little overwhelming. The other thing, and this was probably the most difficult page for my husband and I to fill out, is putting what you would and would not accept. You had to choose if you wanted a boy or a girl, if it didn't matter to you. You had to choose races, and there were all sorts of races on the paper. Then you had to put what sort of illness or disabilities you would be willing to accept. And we were a little more picky about the illnesses and disabilities. We were young and just weren't quite sure what we could handle at the time. So for our first one, we were a little bit more picky about that, but we put that we were accepting of boy or girl. We didn't care any race. We had love to share with a child that we wanted to join our home. So we were approved. And upon meeting with our adoption worker, after getting that paperwork, he said, "You're first time parents, and I really don't feel like you should put that you're open to any race. I feel like you should only put Caucasian." He said, adoption is hard enough to deal with, and trying to explain to a child their place is difficult, and being first time parents is difficult without having to throw a race card in with a Caucasian family that doesn't even match their identity. So he strongly suggested we change that. Wanting to please everybody, we immediately changed that we would accept only Caucasian. I didn't feel good about it. I don't know how long it was, but it wasn't long after that. I had a dream, and in the middle of this dream, there was an African American girl in this dream, and it was as plain as day that was the child that was meant to come to our home. And I woke up the next morning and I said to my husband, "I've had a dream, and I just feel like only Caucasian is not the way to go. We've got to change that paperwork." And he said that he had felt the same way. So we went in and changed the paperwork. And those that know us, my oldest is not a girl and not African American. But that was the dream that got us down the path to get the family that we needed. Before Sam came, we had 3 failed adoptions. So the first one came through the church, and they called us and told us that we had been selected. It was for a African American baby girl that had been born. So I felt like it was all for sure going to happen. And I soon learned that people have their agency in the adoption process, is what I learned. And you have to learn to accept what is right maybe for them. So we had been selected for an African American girl. The night before we were supposed to go meet her and pick up the baby, she had been released from the hospital, and leaving the hospital without a baby was way more than she could handle. And so she put the baby in with another family just to think about it over the weekend. And of course, everything with us happened on long weekends. It was Martin Luther holiday in January. So that's when this happened. And she ended up changing her mind and deciding to parent that child. And I've looked back and I found out her life situation, and I believe that was the right decision she made in that moment. That was not the child meant for our family. Our child was still out there somewhere. So
what was that like to realize she had changed her mind?
It was devastating for us at the time, very devastating, because she was the baby in my dream. And it's taken me years after hearing she had lost a couple of other children, and knowing the Lord knew eventually she'd be by herself and need that child to help her. Hindsight is always 20/20,
Yeah.
Looking back now, it totally was the right thing, because Otherwise, we wouldn't have the family that we have now.
Whoops.
Yeah, it gets worse before it gets better.
Oh no.
We're frantic to find the child that was meant for us. And the birth moms select the families. So they'll go into the agency, and most birth moms usually choose months in advance. And the agency contacted us again a month later. This time it's over President's Weekend. The birth mom had had a baby. This one was a little boy. And her circumstances were such that the agency felt like she had the support, that she would definitely place that baby for adoption. And I said, no, I'm going home to my mom's for the weekend. If she does place the baby, we can be there in 2 hours, but I'm not going to sit around and hope and hang on to that. So we left to keep ourselves busy and not think about what was going on at hand. And sure enough, we got the call on a Saturday. My husband and I left early on that Sunday morning and picked up the baby from the agency and brought the baby home. My mom and sister came up, but we were doing the happy grandma, happy family moment and went to bed. And Monday morning, bright and early, my phone rang. And I remember my husband answered it. I remember he was even making pancakes for breakfast. It's funny how things just freeze in your mind. And the agency said, the birth mom has changed her mind and we need the baby back. We were totally devastated. So they came and got the baby. And I remember that day feeling like I was dressing that baby for a memorial. Like for me, it was a death of a child that I had longed for and waited for my whole life. At that point, my husband and I decided that we wanted a child in our home, regardless of how long that would be. And so we applied to be foster parents. And we live out west. Being foster parents, there's lots of opportunities to be foster parents. We were doing it simply to be foster parents, and maybe, just maybe, we might adopt. But adopting through the foster care system, especially out west, is very, very difficult. And the state believes blood is best, and so they give the birth families a lot of chances to change and to reunite those kids with their parents. But we wanted to do it, my husband and I said, even if it's for a day, even if it's for a month, a year, we just really, really wanted someone in our home to share our love with. During this time, we're still working on trying to add to our family through adoption. And so someone had told us about a third-party agency. They contacted us. They needed money up front. And in March, a baby was born, and we ended up putting money toward that third-party adoption. And I don't know if the baby was ever born or if it was a smoke and mirrors sort of deal, but we ended up losing money and there was still no baby at the end of that adoption. So now we've had 3 failed adoptions in 3 months, and I am just devastated. I still remember, and this is where I think the other miracle about adoption, I think maybe, and I'm going to get emotional about, but maybe the biggest miracle in adoption is, I said to my mom one day, Mom, who would carry a baby for 9 months and place it with total strangers to raise for their whole life and maybe never have contact with that child, maybe never even know where that child is going? Through my children's life, the adoption laws have changed a lot. When my oldest was born, you didn't have a lot of contact. You wrote letters through the agency, but I just remember thinking, who would be pregnant for 9 months, give that baby to total strangers and entrust that baby with someone else? So I think for me, the greatest miracle in all of adoption is the love mom has to place that baby in a family's that they don't know, and trust that that family will give them the life that they could not provide for that baby. That to me is the biggest miracle of the whole process.
Yeah.
I'm so very thankful for birth moms. Anyway, moving on, we now are in month 4, and I remember one morning, I still remember the morning my husband was heading off to school, and we get a call from our neighbor that actually called and said, your adoption worker has called and he doesn't want to call you. He's really afraid of calling you guys now, but he has a situation coming in today, and the birth mom speaks only fluent Spanish. I said, well, great. When's the baby due? And is it a boy? Is it a girl? And I asked a million questions, and the neighbor said, I don't know. I was just the middleman to see if you guys might be interested. And I said, this is my whole dream, to be a mom. So of course I'm interested. And we put our heart on the line every time. One time it's going to work out. And so I don't feel like we can turn anything down. Well, when it's right, it's just going to fall together and it's going to work. She called the worker back, and at that point he knew it was safe to call us, and he called us and said, I can't keep this a secret anymore, because at that point we had said we didn't want to know about a baby until it was free for adoption, meaning there's usually a 10-day period or till the birth mom had been able to waive her rights before a judge, and the birth father as well. And that usually took about 10 days. And so I just said, my heart can't do these. They called them at risk, meaning that anyone could change their mind at any moment. I just said I couldn't do this anymore. Well, the adoption worker said, I can't tell you a lot because I don't know a lot, but she's had the baby, and the baby's been placed with another family. They call them foster homes, but they aren't true state foster homes. They're just families through this private agency who have agreed to take care of the baby until the adoptive family can get there, until the birth mom's made some decisions. And so they said that this baby had been placed with a foster home, and the birth mom was going into court that day to waive her rights. They didn't know if she would show up and waive her rights. They didn't know if she would not show up at all. But he felt like at this point, they couldn't keep us in the dark any longer. And so we found out it was a baby boy, and frantically got stuff ready and actually drove across town to meet this birth mom that afternoon. She was Hispanic. Their culture is you take care of your own, which is really beautiful. She had received a lot of pressure from her community, like, just bring the baby home and we will help you take care of this baby. And I really applaud her for realizing that it was a lot more than what she could do. 21 years ago, it was not normal for you to meet the birth mom, but we were fortunate. She came over after court and we were able to meet her. We had a translator in the room that translated, and it was just such a beautiful experience. For her, it was very important that she be present when the baby was placed in our arms. And I said, I am fine with that, but this is something we've waited forever. So we're going to do cartwheels and jump up and down. And I know this is something that is very sad and heartbreaking to you. And she said she needed to see the happiness to help her heal. And so we agreed. The other thing is, it was not normal. It was like a huge no-no. And so as she's saying this and as they're translating it, the workers are like, she's not supposed to be in the room when the baby is placed with the adoptive couple. When we met the birth mom, I asked her why she was placing the baby for adoption, why she was not choosing to parent. And she said that her and her daughter, she had a daughter that was a little bit older, basically lived on the streets. And if they kept Sam, they would have to be out on the street. I had expected to feel happiness and excitement. Instead, I felt heaviness in my heart for the sacrifice she was making. It was very difficult for me to walk out of that room with a baby that she had had. But what a blessing that baby has been to our family. So we are moving ahead. We have been now married for a little bit. I do remember another miracle I wanted to share about this is one day I was driving around town, just having a conversation with God in my head. I'm just like, God, if I was supposed to learn something from those 3 failed adoptions, I really hope that I've learned what I was meant to learn, because I don't want to live through that again. And I just kind of questioned, why did I have the dream of the African-American girl that didn't come to fruition? And just why did I go through all of that? And I just plain as day had this thought come to my mind: the others were meant for you. However, this child needed you more than any of the others. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, that makes total sense to me. It makes total sense to me, because they would have lived on the street. So of course, this baby, everyone else had a home and a mom to go home to, and this child would not have had the same sort of life. I have learned he's now 21. Life with him has not always been easy. He's made some difficult choices in life, and parenting has not always been bliss, as with any of our children, but more so sometimes with him. I tease him that he's giving me my gray hairs. And that conversation has played over and over in my mind. The meaning has changed for me over the years. There are times that I think other families would have given up on Sam. I think there are times that other families would have shut the door on Sam. But our family has stuck through with Sam through thick and thin, and in very difficult moments. And Sam, we've learned a lot from Sam, and I hope he's learned from us as well. But that is another miracle, is just hearing the whole purpose of why Sam was meant to come to our home. Fast forward, Sam's 3, and we're starting to think it's time to add on to our family. Again, through this private agency, they didn't take credit card. I have to say this in advance. They didn't take credit card. You had to prove you had your $4,000 or your money to adopt the baby in savings. And adoption laws have changed. Birth moms were selecting families a lot sooner in their pregnancy so that they could communicate and build a relationship. We put in our paperwork and we got approved. And looking back, it was almost exactly 9 months from the time we applied to the time that Connor came along. In the process, Christmas time came and we really wanted an entertainment center. And so we went out and bought a really nice entertainment center, and we used some of our adoption money to buy the entertainment center that we felt we needed. And my rationalizing in all of this is, it's okay. We can put back all the money because usually they select us in advance. So we'll have months to prepare. The agency we were going through was starting to promote more and more of third-party adoption. So if we knew someone that was having a baby, try to quote unquote match make us up. Mm-hmm. They put up a website that they were encouraging couples to put their profiles on for birth mothers to look at. Another thing that is pretty common with birth moms is a lot of them like their child to be the oldest. They think that is the ultimate gift for a couple that can't have children. Little do they know any child to a couple that can't have children is the ultimate gift. But nevertheless, we had filled out our paperwork and we were approved. And I called our worker on this particular morning, and Sam was on the main level and I was upstairs, and I called the worker and I said, I'm just trying to figure out how to put our profile online. And he said, I actually need you to hold off on the profile. He said, someone has been looking at your profile and he says she wants her baby to be the oldest. And that kind of is her hang up with you guys, is you already have a child. And I'm like, that's kind of a big hang up. We can't undo that. And we really kind of like Sam. So, and I said, well, how soon is she due? And he says, she's due pretty soon. And my heart kind of sank because my mind turned to the money. I don't have money to afford this child. I don't have the money. And if she selects us, if we're approved, I don't have that time to rebuild that nest egg that we had spent on Christmas. I had quickly said a prayer to God, like, please let her choose someone else. Even though as much as I really, really wanted this baby, I could not get past the dollar sign in my mind. Sam had been watching TV on the main level, and I happened to walk in. I didn't say anything. I'd actually just come down from my bedroom, and as soon as I got to the bottom of the landing, Sam turned to me. I hadn't said anything to him, and he said, Mom, my new baby brother is coming. And I did a 360. I headed right back upstairs to the room, and I said, okay, I need to change my thought. We do want a baby. More than anything, we want a baby. But I need you to help me with that big hurdle of how am I going to get money for this baby. That we ended up at that time getting a credit card application in the mail, and we decided to do a huge cash advance that paid for Connor to get here. So Connor came shortly thereafter. Well, actually, that's kind of another miracle. His birth mom had been looking at files. She had written us a letter that she had selected us. And we had gone down to the agency. They called us in to give us this letter. And she was due, probably I would say about a month away. As soon as she selected us, she went into labor. I didn't know she was in labor. We wrote back this, we're so excited. And then there was a pause. Like, we sent it to the agency and the communication stopped. And as an adoptive parent, anytime there's a pause, your heart sinks because you're like, what's the matter? And in our first two adoptions that failed, extended family was a part of the decision to help convince the birth moms to keep the babies. And so my first question is, how many family members are there at the hospital with her, helping her change her mind? And why are we not getting answers? And it came early the next morning at 6 a.m. that she had the baby. They said, and just so you know, there was no family around. Her family had ended up leaving town, which for us, there was no one there to really change her mind. She was pretty set in her decision, though. So I don't think family would have changed her mind anyway. But for us, that was a tender mercy and a tender blessing. Sam, because he'd lived with a foster home, was about 10 days old when we got him. Connor was brought over right from the hospital. He was less than 24 hours old. He was just so, babies are so fun. I can still smell him and see he was perfect. And his birth mom and then his birth father's sister, so his birth aunt, came to the agency and placed him in our arms. And we had such a great meeting with them. I felt like I had known them before. We just clicked on a level that is really hard to explain to someone that's not been through that. But for a time, we sent letters through the agency, and then we soon felt confident sending letters to the birth mom through email and mail. And pretty soon we got a letter that her and the birth father were getting married. People are always like, were you scared? And I'm like, well, she'd signed her rights away 10 months before. Like, even if she wanted to, like, it's too late for her to change her mind. But I, in my heart, wondered if one day she would have regrets. Shortly after, another letter came. After the wedding announcement, a little letter came, and it just answered every question I had. And it wasn't even addressed to me. It was addressed to Connor. That one day you might wonder why I placed you for adoption. And she said, I never felt like you were meant to be mine. I felt like I was the vehicle to get you to where you were meant to be. And your mom now knew that you were meant to be. And so she says, so if you ever question, I'm here to answer your questions. Your mom's there to answer your questions. But more importantly, there's God. If you ever wonder if you're not where you're meant to be, take it up with God, because we all have confirmation that you are where you're meant to be. Connor is my one child that really doesn't question anything. He's really his own self. He marches to his own drum, and he feels pretty good in his own skin. If no one's doing it, it doesn't matter. Connor's going to do it because that's what Connor wants to do. He has just been a pure joy. All of our children have brought us joy. Being Connor's mother has been such a fun experience. After his birth parents were married, we began to have a little bit more open adoption with them. For a period, his birth mom lived at her parents' house, so we would stop by their house to drop off Christmas presents and birthday presents. When Connor turned 8, his birth father's mother sent a cute little gift to him with a lot of family significance. There were a lot of little items in there that had a lot of family significance. And for me, having an open adoption with Connor, it wasn't an option with Sam. I would have done it had it been an option with Sam. My last two are a little different as far as their background, but it just wasn't available. But it's been fun to see things that hold family significance or be able to share with him. He's a terrible swimmer. It took him forever to get his swimming merit badge because he would sink in the swimming pool and he would come home so frustrated. And I have to give it to his scout leaders because they would take him time and time again. They even did extra things to help him swim, and come to find out all of his birth family can't swim. They all have dense bones that they sink instead of swim. And so things like that are always really fun to find out about his genetics and family. And anyway, when we adopted through our private agency, we had to get an ecclesiastical endorsement or an endorsement from our leader. Also with our agency, they let you adopt 2 children through their agency, but if you wanted additional children, again, going back to that matchmaker, you kind of had to find someone that could matchmake you. So we had decided that we would do it one more time, that we would adopt one more time. We got to our leader and asked him if he would sign off on our adoption. And he's like, absolutely. And I think this is so exciting that you're adopting one more child. And I said, let me make it clear. It's one more and we're done. Like, you won't see us again. We are done. And my husband sitting across the room said, but don't be so quick. I have a feeling this last set is a set of twins that are meant to come to us. And I laughed and I'm like, oh, you are so full of it. And I don't believe you at all. And anyway, we at this point had been doing foster care. We'd had lots of people, lots of kids in our home, some teenagers that tried our every wit, some of them young kids that had stayed for quite a while that tugged at our heartstrings. Foster kids just tug at your heartstrings anyway, just because of their circumstances. And I wish I could have adopted every single one of them. But on a particular morning, I got a call from the state wondering if we would take a sibling group, 2 siblings. One of them was a boy who was about 15 months old, and the other was a little baby girl that was 3 months old. They wanted us on 30 days because they were in a foster home that was going on vacation for 30 days. I, of course, said, oh, absolutely, this will be so fun. Who doesn't want to play mom to a little baby girl because I had two boys. I was dying for a girl. So who doesn't want to play mom? Just even for 30 days, we were going to have so much fun. When the worker came to my door to drop them off that afternoon, I instantly had this feeling, your babies are home, your family's complete. And they were only to stay 30 days. We were only going to foster them while their foster family went on vacation. That feeling, I've had to come back to that feeling several times over and over. I still go to it about once a week. I'm like, remember that feeling? They were meant to come to you. The older boy, he was 15 months. He went through a lot that he will never get over in his lifetime because of his life experiences in the 15 short months that he was at home with his birth mom and birth family. So I felt like my babies were home. So I immediately called my mom and said, Mom, you know how you get 3 days of vacation to come and help when your kids have babies? Like, I need you to take that. And because there's 2, you should get 6, right? And she's like, Jen, they're just foster kids. You've had lots of foster kids over the years. I'm like, no, this is different. And I don't know how to explain it's different. As the 30 days came winding down, my heart got really heavy about sending these kids back. Even though I knew they were going home to a great family, would be going to a great family, we had fallen in love and they fit perfectly in our family. And so I said to my husband, I don't know what to do about that feeling about they were meant for us. And he says, I know you don't be quiet until you say your piece. So why don't we go down to the state and talk to the state health and welfare and see what we can say. So we got ready and we went down and we just laid it out on the table for them. I just said, we've fallen in love with these kids. And if the chance ever came up for us to adopt them, we sure would love to have them. They were cautious at first. They have to let you know their standard is to reunite them with their families. And I said, but if that doesn't work, I really would hope you would reconsider us. And I said, but more so than that, and I know this other foster home really would like them back. And Logan, I have to say, we were his 3rd foster home in 3 short months. So he had been through a lot. And I said, 30 days for a 15-month-old is a really long time. So he's gotten used to our routines and food and different things, how we eat and that. And to send him back to, even though it was something he was familiar with, it would be a whole new adjustment for him. And they again told us they would reach out to the foster home. If the foster home was good with that they would let us then just foster them until the birth family had proven that they were ready. The foster family agreed to let us take them back. They had a lot on their plate as well and felt like they could do Natalie, but not Logan. And so the state is really adamant about keeping children together. And so we were happy to keep Logan and Natalie together. And, going back to that conversation, that thought of my husband of them coming as twins, Logan had a lot of developmental delays and we went to a lot of therapies. We still go to a lot of therapies. And a lot of therapists are like, with Logan's delays, it makes him and Natalie almost exactly the same age. And so, again, another little miracle of how we just knew that I didn't know, but how my husband knew that they would be coming as a set. We outgrew our house overnight. We only had 3 bedrooms and the 2 downstairs were full. So we ended up putting our house up for sale and moving across town to a home that could accommodate us. And Logan's birth parents were not quite so easy to give them up. We had to really fight to get them. I remember sitting in a meeting and they said, we're not going to leave until the birth father will agree to let you guys adopt. Now, this could be interesting. We could be here for days if we're going to come to an agreement. But the workers explained to them how much care Logan would take. Logan falls on the Asperger scale, as well as a lot of developmental things that happened while he was at home that really were going to take a lot of therapies, and some that even our little community isn't equipped to have specialists in, that would require traveling. Once that was explained to the birth father, he very willingly said that he was good with us adopting Logan as well. So again, I feel like a soft heart for the birth father to see what was really in the best interest was another tender mercy that happened along the way so that our children could be where they needed to be. adoption truly has blessed our lives, and we have definitely seen the hand of the Lord in our lives throughout the process, and our lives have been greatly enriched because of adoption.
That's amazing. I'm just loving the whole journey and the whole process. And I loved hearing all of the miracles. Sometimes I'll just have phrases come into my mind, but I'm just feeling you have such a big heart. Like just this heart that opens up for children to come, foster children. And I know it's not easy. Parenting is not easy, but then to have that big heart to love children through foster care and all of that is amazing. I think
Well,
that's
thank you.
beautiful.
I feel like, yes, both my husband and I do feel like have huge hearts. That's why we wanted other children to come into our home, but I have never once looked at them as someone else's. They were meant. And when I say ours, they're not just ours. We know they're not ours. We know they're ours plus birth families. And ultimately, aren't we all God's children?
Yes. I love that because I had a moment like that in when my children were little and praying about what should I teach my children? How should I be a good mom? And it was the Spirit said to me, you get to have a relationship with this child. This child is mine, God's, right? Like, and you're mine, and you get a relationship with them. And it was an honor. I felt the kind of my perspective shift to what an honor it is to be in a relationship with these people at this time. And it sounds like I love how your children came to you and came to your home. All of it was just beautiful and miraculous. I love
Yes.
that. And I didn't know November was adoption month.
Yes. The other day when we've been trying to work this out for couple months, and it came to me, I'm like, National Adoption Awareness Month is in November, and what a great way to honor National Adoption Awareness Month and share what a great experience adoption is, not just for my family, but for families all over the world.
I love that. I always see that there's little timing to things that God orchestrates and we just get to be the
Which is so
vehicles.
long.
I know. So I love that. Well, Jennifer, thank you so much. I really am honored that you shared your story and I've felt touched listening to it. So thank you.
Thank you, Liza.
Thank you so much for listening to this miracle story. Please subscribe to my channel